Right, so good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. So I thought I'd do this right quick because I was going to do something yesterday, but and it was going to be something a little different, but I wanted to give you all the visuals, and I really didn't have time for all of that. So I just thought I'd finish or give you a little more about my brother-in-law, my relationship with him, and what happened. So I was telling you all yesterday that not yesterday, the day before, that I'd asked him. My husband was at Her Majesty's Prison Lewis, which was in Brighton, Sussex, and it was about I want to say about 2 hours out of London. And I asked him, he, like I told you, he took the car. So he had the car, and I didn't see him very much. And I called him this particular time because I didn't want to get on the train and the buses with the baby and all of that. So he agreed to take me up there. So I got ready, I came out to the front of the house. I'm waiting on him. And before I saw him, I heard him. He had all the windows down, and the music was just blasting, blaring out loud. And he pulls up, he jumps out the car, all right, and he helped me get the stuff in the car. Now, a little background to him. He was the type of guy that, all right, here's what happened. So before I met my ex, I met him first. And I can't remember where I met him at, but, we were out somewhere, and he had actually asked me out. And I said no. And the reason I said no, I just didn't like him. He was very flashy, bolshy. Like, he would walk in the pub, and his feet would be outwards like this, and he'd walk like that, and he'd come in the pub and he'd stand there and he'd say, anyone want a drink? And he'd put his hand in his pocket and he'd pull out a wad of notes, and it would be like £1 notes, your equivalent of maybe $1, and he'd look for a fiver, and he'd pull it out, anyone want to drink. So I just didn't like his aura, if you will, and so I said no. Now, about a year later, me and my girlfriend, we had an apartment together, and I came home from work one day, and his brother was there. Well, I didn't know it was his brother. I didn't really know them in that way. And she introduced me to him, and I think by the end of what it was, she had a child with someone that used to work with him or work. And they'd broken up. But he would always check on her. He would come and, if she needed any money, whatever, he would give her. They were good friends, and she introduced me to him. And then by the end of his visit, as he was leaving, he said, can I take you out to dinner? And I really liked him. Like I said, he looked like Michael Francis. He was dressed head to toe in designer gear. He was a Calvin Klein lover, so everything. He really looked good, and I liked him, but I didn't realize who his brother was, obviously. Anyway, so we kind of hit it off from there. So we went out to dinner. Now, his brother's idea of a date, because he dated some girlfriends of mine, was, to go down the pub where he can be flash airy and show off. And then he'd stop at the local burger joint, for dinner. Now, his brother, on the other hand, we went to a really nice restaurant and whatever. Our second date, he took me to Paris, France. We went up the Eiffel Tower, the Champs-Elysees. It was fabulous. And, he was more my speed. But in any event, and it wasn't about Paris or whatever with the money. I'd already been to France, but he just had a different, what they were chalk and cheese. So, my ex was the brains, and his brother didn't have any. So, and he would include him in stuff. Not all the time now, but occasionally he would, if the brother was down on his luck and he didn't have no money, then, if he was doing something, he would include him. But even he knew, there was something like off there. But anyway, so he pulls up, all this music's playing. I said, look, can you turn the music? I mean, my God, So he turns it down a little bit, not too much. And he said, no, we've got to have fun along the way, whatever. And I used to hate driving with him because he drove like a maniac. Now, the streets of London are very short, small like that. And this was a big car, and he would be, I would white knuckle it. I was white knuckling it all the way to Brighton, to be honest. And he was the type of guy, like, I can't remember who sang this song, but it was on Broadway. The song was, they say the women treat you right on Broadway. And I forget who sings it, but that came on as we were driving. And I look across and he's driving to the music. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's literally driving to the music. And I was petrified all the way there. But in any event, on the way there, so he decides to stop off at a burger joint. Now, this is how uncouth he was. He jumped out, ordered himself like burger, whatever the hell it was, fries, and a milkshake, right? So he didn't ask me if I wanted anything. I didn't, but it wasn't the point. He didn't even ask, right? So he gets back in with his stuff, and he's sucking on this milkshake, and I kind of looked over, and he said, oh, do you want some? And I looked down, and he kind of went like this to give it to me. And I looked down at the milkshake, and on the straw, he had gingivitis. And so his gums would bleed. And there was blood all around the straw. I said, no, it's all right. I was like, oh, God. And the only way I can describe to you how his table manners, how he used to eat, is Tony Pizza. If you've ever seen Tony Pizza eat, that was it. He's talking and all the food's in his. Oh, I thought even if I was hungry, I'd completely lost my appetite. Anyway, so we drive on, and once he'd finished, with his food, and we're driving on, and I'm holding onto the seat. I'm a horrible backseat driver anyway. But he was just something that I hated driving with him. And he'd been in many accidents as well. So he wasn't like, I don't know. I just was scared to death all the way. I was so glad when we got there. But before we got there, he's coughing. He started to cough. And I swear to God, and this is gross, so, brace yourselves. So he starts, and he summoned up the biggest, we call them green Gilberts, that's what we call them. He summoned up this big wad of yuck from his lungs. And prior to this, you see, he had the window open, and he had closed the window, but he didn't realize that the window was closed. And he summoned up this big, and he went, he thought the window was open. Well, it wasn't. And this big green Gilbert was on the window and slid. Oh my God, I almost threw up. I said, oh, it made me absolutely, oh my God. And he said, oh, sorry, I thought the window was open. You know, he was like a himbo, like a doofus. I'll tell you who he looked like. Al Capone. He looked like Al Capone, yeah. He was stockier than his brother. His brother was tall and slim, like Michael Francis. He was more stocky. And oh my God, I wanted to die at this point. I thought, let me the fuck out of here. Anyway, we get to the prison and we go in, and my ex comes out. And do you know, this guy sat there through the whole entire visit, talking about absolutely nothing. I would have thought, you know, all right, you're there, you see your brother, hey, you talk a little bit, whatever, because it was on a time limit. I think it was like an hour you were allowed, and all right, 30 minutes, and then leave. Let me, you know, let us talk. No, he sat there through the whole freaking thing, and was talking about absolutely nothing, took over the whole conversation. We're kind of looking at one another like, oh my God. And visit comes to an end. All right, we've got to go. So we go. The ride back was a nightmare. Same thing. He's driving to the music. You know, I was never so glad to see my house. I didn't think I was going to make it alive, to be honest. And I was still overcome with nausea from the milkshake to the spitting out the window. I mean, oh my God. Anyway, so when my ex got out, I told you a little bit about that the other day. So this was a while later. And what used to happen is, my brother-in-law just really didn't have any brains. He just really didn't, you know. Like, if Benny would have offered him the bag snatching thing, he would have gone ahead and done it. That was more his thing, you know. My ex, no, he was a little bit more sophisticated than that. And so this is a good while later, but we got it. So the brother had done, he'd done this job, right? And they did pretty well on it, really well on it, actually. And this was just like a fluke thing, because normally he did like little shit, you know. And I don't know how it came about, but anyway, he did this particular job, and he came out, you know, pretty good with the money. So what does he do? He runs out and buys a brand new Mercedes Benz. It was a sports car, you know, with the roof that comes off. And oh my God, you couldn't tell him nothing, you know. He thought he was the bee's knees. He really did. And people, see, the thing was, everybody liked my ex, but they didn't care for him. And that was why, because he was just flashy. He used to show off, and he used to get on people's nerves, to tell you the truth. And so we were all down the pub on the Friday, and here he rolls up, the music's blaring, the top's down. It's fucking freezing, but he had the top down, of course, you know, and he walks in there, you know, anyone want a drink? You know, and I just used to think, oh, Christ. Anyway, so it was a few days later, and we hadn't seen him. And, you know, I was used to not seeing him when my husband wasn't around. But when he was around, it would be, he would either call, or it'd be every couple of days, he would roll up and, whatever. And I want to say, like, I don't know, it might have been 4 days or so, and nobody had seen him or heard from him. And my husband was getting a little, he said, well, have you, because at this time, the brother had a girlfriend. She was a friend of mine, and they had a baby together and whatever. And but they were together. They would always break up. They were on and off, on and off. And he said, well, give her a call and see if she's seen him. So I called her. She said, no, I haven't, but that wasn't unusual because they were always fighting. So, because he was an ass, literally. And so I said, no, she hasn't seen him. So a few days go by, we still ain't seen him. Then I think it was a Saturday, the knock at the door, it's him. So I opened the door. He's like white as a ghost. He had on like a polo shirt, but there were like marks like around his neck. And I said, are you all right? What, where you been? So he said, oh, his brother there. I said, yeah, so he came up. So I left them alone to talk. And, my ex says, listen, I've got to make a run. I've got to go. So I'll be back later. So I'm like, well, what's going on? I mean, obviously something was going on, right? So he said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll be back. So they leave. And I think he came back real late. And I was waiting because I just knew something was wrong. So I said, well, what happened? So he said, what had happened was his brother, Mr. Big Shot, with his new Mercedes, and he's in the pub, he's acting like a right dick, pulling his money out. And when he went to leave, they jumped him. He was jumped. They put him in a van, took his car keys. Somebody drove the car, and they took him to a warehouse where they proceeded. They took his jewelry, they took his money. He had a lot of money on him, and they tried to strangle him at first. That's why he had these marks. And they took his car and they left him there. And well, they had him for a while, I guess. And I don't know how he got back. He didn't call anyone. And I guess what he did was, made his way home and stayed in hiding for a while. I don't know. And so I said, well, what happened? Why were you gone? He said, well, we were trying to see if we could get the car back and whatever, because they knew who did it. But it wasn't something, he couldn't report it to the police because he'd got it on ill-gotten gains anyway. They'd want to know, well, how did you even buy this car? Or, had the money that they took and etc. So they knew that, he couldn't report it. And I mean, not that he would have anyway. And so my ex had been, trying to negotiate to get at least the car back, but that didn't work either. He had done some other stuff apparently, and they weren't having it. And guess what? He was out like Flint. He didn't get the car. He didn't get his money back. None of the above. And then after that incident, it kind of curbed him a little bit. It curbed him a little bit. He needed like a coming to Jesus moment. And I guess that was it for him. He didn't act that way again because, I had said to my ex, I said, well, what the hell does he expect? He walks around like fucking his shit don't stink, Flash Harry. He's rolling around in a, Mercedes Sports, carrying on like, his shit don't stink. I said, what do you expect? What did he expect? And anyway, it didn't do no good. He didn't get nothing back. And he kind of curbed it a little bit. I won't say too much, but enough that I think that taught him a lesson. And that didn't happen again. And that was another thing, that it was always said, when you do something like that, and okay, you do okay, he was the one that would be running out there. Again, I'm going to liken it to Goodfellas, the Christmas thing, where everyone's coming in fur coats, they've got Cadillacs sitting outside. I mean, come on, it's the same thing, really. And that's what he used to do. And so that's what happened, Anyway, that's it for me for now. I just thought I'd reiterate on the drive to the prison. Yeah, that was an interesting. Oh God. Anyway, everyone take care. And next week I'm gonna do something a little bit different to explain. Well, we'll see next week. I'm going to have to get the stuff together, and it was going to take too long today, so that's why I didn't do it. But yeah, so everyone have a good day, and I'll see you later. Bye. If I can find my mouse. See, what happens is, I don't know, my mouse just disappears.